City Council for and I find a giant loss in our Vice Mayor not being here, so I feel a little bit like you might say a pitcher without a catcher or a ball without a bat. So I'm going to really need your guys' help. It's a short meeting, but I hope I can get through it. Help me out as you can, all right? Thank you. All right, we have the Scouts here tonight, and they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Color guard front and center. Color guard, please prepare to present the colors. Color guard, advance. Will the audience please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, post the colors. Color guard, retreat. The audience may be seated.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 2, which is changes to the order of the agenda. I did talk with the city manager before the meeting, and I think this would be not really a change to the order, but in a way a change to the order. Item 11B, we're talking about just holding off on that item. It's a discussion by the council of our next planning retreat, and being that Mr. Grisilli's not here, we thought we'd wait. There's no urgency. We can wait till our next meeting and discuss that item. So that's all right with everybody. I have no other changes. Anybody else have anything? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, reports from closed session. There was a score that was discussed in closed session, but other than that, Mr. City Attorney?
No reportable action from the closed session.
Okay, very good. And item 4 is council communications and announcements. Who'd like to start? Mr. Robert, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that I've had the opportunity to sit in on a Parks and Rec Commission meeting and Planning Commission meeting, and I found them both educational and informative, and it was nice to see all the support in depth, the bench depth that we have in San Carlos for dealing with public issues.
Very good. Any others?
I attended a regional planning meeting for the California Comprehensive Early Learning Plan, where they were looking at possible priorities for different policies. They're looking at it regionally, and then they'll pull it all together and look at any enhancements that need to be made in the early education policies that they're working on right now. And then I went to the ABAG Fall Assembly last week, and it was very interesting presentations and discussions regarding primarily focused on economic reliance, but really looking at the influence of what they called innovation jobs. Not just high tech, but that's included in it, but what they called innovation jobs, and how that influences our regional economy. It was very well done, and if anyone's interested in the information, I can forward it on through the city manager.
Very good. Mr. Collins.
I'd like to report that due to a very generous invitation from the chairman of the reunion committee, Councilmember Clapper, and myself had the opportunity to attend the 50th reunion of the first graduating class from San Carlos High School in 1962. It was actually quite special because my own cousin was a graduate in that class, so I got to see her. And it was a beautiful event over at Sparky's Hot Rod Garage, and we also presented a proclamation that the city put together for one of their teachers who, interestingly, is still alive and attended that event. So we had a great time, and it was nice to be included in their affair.
Very good. Thank you. And the only item I have to report is not on something that has happened, but on something that is going to happen. And I just wanted to make the council and the public aware that there's going to be some awards given out next Tuesday night, October 30th, at the old courthouse building in Redwood City. And we nominated a person from our community. I'm not going to say who it is. If you want to find out, you could go, or you can wait until our next council meeting. We'll probably announce that person. But we did nominate, as the mayor, I was privileged to nominate someone from our community for a diversity award, and that's going to take place, like I said, October 30th at the old courthouse building in Redwood City. And Christine, that's at 6 p.m., I believe. Is that right? 5:30, 6
I believe it is 6 o'clock, yes.
Okay, very good. So that'll be a nice surprise for everybody.
Mr. Mayor, can I add something to my comments, just very briefly?
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that I also had the honor of attending, and I believe Councilmember Clapper was there as well, the San Carlos Educational Foundation Leadership Circle meeting, where they discuss educational issues and funding issues, and it was an excellent program. However, the specific thing I want to do is, when I used to serve on the school board, it always used to drive me crazy that these kind of events, they would always announce the council members who were in attendance, and they would never announce the school board members who were there. So I wanted to do just a quick shout out to Adam Rack and Kathleen Farley, who were there, and appreciate all the work that they and their colleagues are doing on behalf of the community. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 5A, which is council appointments, and we have two items here. One is consideration of appointing someone to represent us on the Caltrain modernization planning process. The other item is going to be a discussion of appointing a council member, or council members too, I suppose, two council members to the Code of Conduct and Ethics Subcommittee. I think Mr. Mora wants to say something to us about the Caltrain modernization.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I just wanted to briefly go over this item. As you probably recall, late last year, the Caltrain folks restarted their work on Caltrain electrification and high-speed rail, and we came to you in January and February with several reports, and we also have something in your strategic plan for later this year in terms of providing another comment letter when their study on blended systems is complete. But a couple months ago, several of the elected officials in different cities expressed an interest in forming an elected officials working group very similar to the group that existed in 2009 and 10 for high-speed rail. They met in September and are proposing a series of monthly meetings to last roughly an hour per meeting, and they're asking you tonight to nominate a representative and alternate to this new group. So that's what this is all about.
Very good. So the way we would do this is discuss it. If anybody's strongly interested, we would take your strong interest into consideration. Let's see what we got.
I had a question.
Okay.
How this overlaps or doesn't overlap with the, we have under, in the attachment in our package here, there's a section, page 2, in the middle of the page lists appointments to city council committees and council ad hoc committees. And one of those is the Caltrain modernization / high-speed rail. That the mayor and Councilmember Olbert are currently assigned to. And I didn't know if there was, if it would make sense for those to be similar appointments to this one, or how that overlaps, or if, with the assignment that we're talking about right now.
I wonder if staff would have any comment on that. Whoa.
The origin of that ad hoc committee a couple years past was to have a council committee that would meet periodically when major issues came up regarding modernization and high-speed rail. I think as far as the topic at hand, you certainly could, in response to Councilmember Clapper's question, you certainly could also assign the same two council members to this more regional working group on the theory that these two council members are already working on it more locally. Although I don't recall in the last year or two whether that particular ad hoc committee has met.
Yeah, it's been rather quiet, so,
Thank you.
yeah. Well, do we have anybody, regardless of the question, and I think it's a good point, but do we have anybody who's strongly interested in this committee?
Mr. Mayor, I am.
You are?
I'd love
Okay.
to serve on the working committee.
All right.
And-
Anybody else?
And I would as well.
All right. So I think they only need one, right? Now, we could appoint one and then have the other.
Well, and an alternate, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well,
Okay.
How do we do this?
If Councilmember Collins, thank you, and Councilmember Olbert, I can remember my name, are acceptable to the rest of the council, I would be happy to have my colleague be the lead and I'll be the alternate on it. But again, that's only if that's acceptable to everybody else.
it's acceptable here.
Okay.
So it is
Need a-
said, so
need a
it shall
motion?
be, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I move that we appoint Councilmember Collins as our primary representative and Councilmember Olbert as the alternate to the elected officials working group for the Caltrain modernization planning process.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? And Mr. Grisilli is not present.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item 5B, which is an ad hoc committee, actually, of the Code of Conduct and Ethics Committee, which I see our city manager coming forward on this one, so he's going to say
Good
something.
evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In 2004, the City Council adopted for the first time a council code of conduct and ethics. That policy was again reviewed 1 year later by the City Council. I had the privilege at the time of working with Councilmember Don Eaton and Inga Teagle-Doherty, who were on the subcommittee at the time, working on the policy. It hasn't been looked at now in a number of years. We've got a list of small corrections, new ideas, slight changes in the law, that kind of thing that we think it would be time to reflect in the policy. And so I'm asking that the council appoint an ad hoc committee to work with staff in crafting some recommendations to bring back to council later this year or early next year.
All right. Speaking on behalf of Mr. Grisilli, he did call me and let me know that he's interested in this. So there's one council member who's interested. Do we have anybody else, or do we have, just because he's interested, we could still have a discussion if there's all of us are interested. We just have to choose two. So do we have any interest in this?
As my understanding is, this is a process that's going to be taking place fairly shortly, where the subcommittee is actually going to be working on this.
Yeah, probably a couple of meetings at the most.
That's correct. I would say probably 4 meetings at the most.
Right.
I would be interested.
Okay. So should we make it Vice Mayor Grisilli and Ms. Clapper? Does that make everyone pleased?
Do we need a motion for that?
I don't know. Do we have it doesn't look like an action item. It was just an appointment, so.
Okay.
It's an appointment, so I think a motion would be
Motion,
appropriate.
that's the best
Excuse
way
me?
to handle it. A motion would be a most appropriate way to handle
Okay,
it.
so let's have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we appoint Vice Mayor Grisilli and Councilmember Clapper to the Code of Conduct and Ethics Subcommittee.
And I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed, and Mr. Grisilli is absent. It's always fun appointing someone who's not here. So, except in this case, he actually wanted it, so it's a little different. but-
Doesn't want.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that.
right, that's the thing. Okay, that brings us to item 6, which is presentations, and the first one is we have here from the library, Chet Malacqua. Did I say that right? I've never said your last name before. So he's going to give us a presentation and a report on the library.
I'll say it again. Good evening. My name is Chet Malacca, and I'm a librarian and manager of the San Carlos Library. Thank you, Mayor Grocott and City Council members. It is my privilege to present the San Mateo County Library Annual Report for 2011-2012. The San Carlos Library is maintaining our status as a destination library with over 312,000 visitations made during the last fiscal year. Library users borrowed over 500,000 books, DVDs, CDs, and other items, and over 24,000 people attended our cultural enrichment and educational programs. Many of these were presented by our community partners, a list of which is provided in your packets. One of our most memorable events this past year was planned and presented by an amateur astronomer and San Carlos resident, Mr. Bob Black. Bob recognized that the dome of the library, which normally casts hundreds of circles on our floor and walls on sunny days, would accurately and safely show a solar eclipse in the same manner. In a rare after-hour event, eclipse watchers were instructed on how to create sun viewing devices that allowed them to view the eclipse both inside and outside the library. Telescopes were made available for patron use, an astronomy film series was presented, and solar system-related activities and crafts were available for kids to participate in. Approximately 600 people from San Carlos and across the Bay Area attend the event. We appreciate the willingness of Mr. Black and other program presenters who share their expertise and passions with the community in our library. This past year, we implemented a number of library improvements and new services. Books are now much easier to check out since we've added RFID or radio frequency identification tags to all library materials. We've also installed new security gates that lets our patrons know if any of their items didn't get checked out properly. We have a new service called Discover and Go, which provides free or reduced rate access to many different museums in the Bay Area. From our website, smcl.org, you can print your passes for the day you wish to visit a museum. Another new service is called Job Scout, which is an online learning and social media platform that will teach users job hunting techniques and basic internet skills needed to be successful. Library staff would especially like to thank the Friends of the San Carlos Library who have contributed over $33,000 to augment library services, including funding our summer reading literacy effort, along with additional funds for programming and a $10,000 grant to the San Carlos Healthy Cities tutoring program. We have also received a valuable contribution from the Belmont San Carlos Mothers Club. Both groups have been instrumental in helping us fulfill our community service goals. We would also like to thank the City of San Carlos staff for their continuing support of the library. City staff members have been instrumental in helping plan and prepare for our upcoming interior library improvements, which will be started in the spring of this current fiscal year. Lastly, we would like to thank our volunteers who help us maintain our services and members of the public who utilize our services and very often support us financially by patronizing our in-library bookshop and our monthly Friends of the Library book sales. All this countless support makes the San Carlos Library a true center of community activity. Thank you for your time. I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chet. Any questions? Very good.
I would just like to commend you. You spoke about the library itself, but I'd like to commend you for your leadership of our library here. And so it's such a great staff that are in there. They always have smiles on their faces and are always looking for different ways to help people. And it's really great to have that in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chet. And item B is a presentation and proclamations to Josh Yoland, Matt Freshwater, Steve Pisano, and Zach Deesh upon receiving their Eagle Scout Awards. So if you guys want to meet me down there at the front. Fellas, it's always, whoa, that's really on. It's always fun to recognize you. Your troop has been here many times with many Eagle Scouts, and it's a tremendous thing that you do as Scouts. I know a lot of Eagle Scout recipients over the years have gone on to be leaders in our country, and we'll be expecting the same out of you guys. So I'm going to have you come up, get your award, and then if you could tell us a little bit about your project, each one of you, that would be appropriate. So the first one is to Zach Deesh. Here you go. There's your presentation. If you'd like to tell us about your project.
All right, I'm Zach Deesh. Oh, it is really on. And I collected clothes for the Rose Home in San Francisco to benefit the homeless.
That's very good. Thank you. Next is Stephen Pisano, and his mother is here to receive his award.
Thank you. I'd like to accept this on Stephen's behalf. He couldn't be here. He's a freshman at the University of Arizona, and he, for Habitat for Humanity, made 15 sink display pedestals for their new store that should be open right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And the next one is for Matt Freshwater. Matt?
So for my project, I built some A-frame carts also for Habitat for Humanity, and basically what they do is they're able to transport heavy doors and windows and other objects around the store and display them too.
Very good. Thank you very much. And the last one we have here is for Josh Yoland. Here you go, Josh.
Thank you. I built a fence at Edgewood Park to keep people out of a protected creek bed that contained rattlesnakes in the past, so yeah.
That was your project.
Yeah.
Well, somebody who uses that park, thank you very much. All right, let's give a round of applause for these guys. Thank you. And I just want to thank the troop leader. He's being very quiet in the back there, but you've, like I said, over the years, you've brought a lot of fellows, young men here who've done projects in the community. We appreciate the projects they do. We appreciate the leadership skills that they learn, and just all the things that the Boy Scouts do. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment?
You may. Go ahead.
As someone who aged out, so to speak, 5 merit badges short of my Eagle Scout, nothing but my admiration. Getting every merit badge for me was a lot of work, and I have a deep amount of respect for anybody who puts forth the effort and the time that it takes. It's not easy to get some of those badges. I know they're probably a lot harder now than they were when I was coming along. But anyway, I think you guys are a great inspiration to a lot of young people coming along, and you're going to do well. You're going to do very well. And best of luck to you.
Very good. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move along. Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it very much. Item 7 is public comment, and if we have anybody here from the public that would like to address the council, this is an opportunity for something that's not on our agenda if you wanted to speak to the council on an item. And I don't see anybody jumping out of their chairs, so we're going to move along to item 8, which is approval of the consent calendar. These items usually approved with one motion as a basket, if you will, unless somebody would like to pull something out of the basket and have it considered separately. Mr. Olbert, you have something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to remove and consider separately item 8D.
8D, okay. And the other items are the minutes and then an addendum agreement for EIR services on the Transit Village. So,
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to move approval of items 8A, B, C, and E.
all righty.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Grocott?
Yes. All right, and we'll take item 8D at the end of the meeting then. So that brings us along to reports to council, and we've got a report from staff on Burton Park Phase 2 preliminary design. Mr. Long.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We do have a PowerPoint presentation, if I can get there. Okay, just by introduction, as you're aware, we're moving towards the design of Burton Park Phase 2, and we've been working with the Parks and Recreation Commission and with our consultant, Peter Arnold of Abby Arnold Landscape Architects in San Rafael. We have some preliminary designs that we would like to present to you this evening, and we would welcome any comments and any feedback you have for us. We will then take the show on the road, as it were, and get feedback at some community workshops and get their input, the community's input, and what they're looking for in the design of the park. And then we'll bring this back to our Parks and Recreation Commission and ultimately to the City Council for approval. With that, I would like to bring up Peter Arnold, and he will guide you through our PowerPoint this evening. And it should take 5-6 minutes to get through this.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, thank you for having me. My name is Peter Arnold. I'm a principal of Abby Arnold Associates. We're a landscape architect firm, and we presented this back in 2010. And as a very early on, we did a very preliminary design trying to establish funding. And now we're at the next step. We met with the Parks Foundation and the Park and Rec Commission, and the upgrades include the one portion of the park that hasn't been worked on in quite a while. It's between the newer play structure and the tennis courts, right off the where the horseshoe courts are, between Cedar and Chestnut. The courts are in the same position as they are right now, but we're scooting them a little closer to Cedar. We're adding some landscape, taking out some of the asphalt, and we're adding 3 10-by-70 bocce courts where the ball wall is right now on the Chestnut side of the project. Also, we're adding a stage as well. That's about where they set up the stage for the music in the park nights. And that's just to the left of the basketball courts. So I'll do starting with the bocce courts. I'm going to go over it really quickly here for you. And the lasers don't work on this, but I'm going to come over here and point things out. Thank you. Starting at the top, these are 2 existing oak trees that we're keeping, and this is an existing planting area that we're keeping as well because we don't want to disturb the roots of the existing heritage oak trees. These are each a 10-by-70 bocce court, and they're going to have a rubberized surface to help with maintenance. At each end of the courts, there's going to be a shade structure for vines to be on and for a seat wall to be under. There's going to be seat walls at each end for seating, and we're going to have benches all the way around and 2 picnic tables. And we're going to add landscaped areas. Right now this is all asphalt. We're going to add landscaped areas here and then a storage shed. And go ahead. Go to the next one. Did we go past one? Yeah. Go previous here. There you go. There we go. All right, here are the basketball courts. Tennis courts are right here. Right now there used to be some ukes. They're gone now. But we are scooting the courts a little closer to the street, adding a fence along here to keep the balls from rolling into the street, adding a little color to the courts, and you can see where the stage is right here. There's an existing tree at the top. These are the existing pine trees and a grouping of trees that are there, and there's the turf over here. This is a permanent stage, and as you can see, there's an area at the top that's paved, and there's an area in the front that's paved, and those are meant to be used as a dance floor during events. And when there's not an event, it can be used as a picnic area. We also added some planting along the backside to help screen the back. And so this stage is going to be focused towards the meadow. It'll be a permanent installation. Go ahead. This is something that's up for consideration if it's within budget, is a, what are we calling this, a fitness station. And it's to be used by, there's a group of people, quite a few people that are using something called boot camp fitness. And it's essentially chin-up bars, bar dip bars, sit-up tables, and then we're going to have some benches that can be used for like step-up workouts, traveling bars, and some more chin-up bars. So we're trying to get so that we can have 10 to 15 people working out at the same time here. And they're usually gathered in the mornings and the evenings. But when it's not being used by those folks, it can be used by anybody. And it's going to be a standard type of site furnishings so that people can sit there and use it if they need to. It doesn't have to be an organized event. Here's a SketchUp drawing. Looking from the tennis courts across the basketball courts, you can see the new standards, little picnic table, benches at each end, the back of the stage. This is looking towards the bocce area. These are the seat walls. We're hoping to do some donor tiles in there. We have a very low fence around the edge just to keep it so that you can have events without people walking through it. And these are the arbor type shade structures at each end. And this is looking in from a different angle. And that's looking towards the stage from the bocce courts. And that's from the play area. This is the stage as it would look. I think we got one more sketch here. And that's from the turf meadow, how it would look. So the idea with this is to have a wood look structure, stone veneer with a smooth surface here, and then this would be the dance floor around the edge. And we have to have accessibility so that this will act as a door for accessible entry. Some of the trees we're considering, a valley oak is one there's already some valley oaks there adjacent on the park. Red oaks, Chinese pistache, red maples, and last but not least, the crepe myrtle. And now we got some street furnishings. Oh, I'm sorry, let's go back. This is a bocce court real quick. This is in San Rafael, and this is the type of surface we're looking at. It's a rubberized surface. It's very similar to what you see at playgrounds. It's a rubberized surface that you see underneath playgrounds. It's a little bit cushiony. It's for rolling the ball, and you don't have to have the oyster shells that are a lot of maintenance. And these are the furnishings we're looking at. And these are what's already being used on site. These are the new standards, new trash receptacles, and these are the benches that are currently being used on site. And we're considering using a water bottle filler in addition to the existing drinking fountain that's on site. It's just something that trying to reduce the plastic water bottle use and have something there for people to use. And that's about it.
All righty, thank you. Questions, comments? A little bit of input? Mr. Olbert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions. I suspect this first one simply predates my joining the council. How did we end up selecting bocce? By the way, not that I'm disagreeing with it, I'm just curious.
Do you know Mr. Versili's last name is Italian? He's mayor, he was on the council.
Yeah, he's not here.
It's a multi-generational activity, and it's something that you don't have in the town at all right now. And it seemed like a good fit because this is kind of your historic central park of San Carlos, and it seems like it'll bring another generation into the park that can be used for kids can play it, elderly folks can play it, and it's a nice, quiet activity, but meshes well with what's out there.
Okay. Did you want to add something to that, Mr.
I did, and I get asked that question frequently. It's one of those amenities at a park that we really didn't do any hard data research for. We did it anecdotally, and we know that, I know in Marin County and here along the peninsula, where they have bocce courts is where they have a lot of activity, a lot of leagues, and generally bocce has been played by older adults, and we're seeing that there's a migration of the 30-ish age group starting to play. It actually, if you build it, they will come kind of amenity to a park. So we're very confident. We have heard feedback from folks that we presented this to that they're very excited about that, and we think it's going to be quite successful.
So we expect Kevin Costner to show up at some point?
He should show up, yes, that's right.
The other question I had actually was sparked by an unintended reaction or unexpected reaction I had after we removed the eucalyptus trees around Burton Park. I recall driving past it and going, wow, the park looks a lot, my opinion, nicer, more open and stuff. So I just was curious as to whether I'm associating that with having, sort of a lower tree density there because the trees are gone. Do we consider things like that in terms of, is it possible to have too many trees in a relatively small park?
Sure. Yeah. It is possible, yeah, and it makes it harder to grow turf and et cetera, but it also provides shade, so I tried to find a nice balance. And we have a fairly high density. Usually you can plant 5 trees. It takes 30 years for them to grow. You take 2 of those out, and then you have 3 trees that are full growth that are providing what they need. So it's a matter of management, but generally we slightly overplant just because it takes so long for trees to mature and provide the shade.
I see. I didn't realize that. So basically, there's an overplant and pruning process.
In some cases, it's not always, but in like this, when you have trees in a row and you're trying to provide shade for like a picnic area and some benches, we put a couple extra in, and then they can.
So we need to put a dead drop memo in our file.
Right. For like 40 years from now, so they'll have to
20
pull it
years
out.
from now to go prune. Okay, thank you.
That'll become heritage. All right, other questions or comments?
I know this past summer, the Sheriff's Activity League came in and 2 or 3 times showed movies in the evening. And I was wondering if this was still going to accommodate space for them to do that, because I'm guessing they would still need to bring in their inflatable movie screen. They wouldn't be able to use the stage. How will that be handled?
It would work either way, whether they brought in their inflatable screen or we provided a screen in the stage area. I think the inflatable screen is rather fun myself, and we certainly would be able to accommodate the number of people. And just back up a little bit, if you may have had the opportunity to attend that event.
I saw it, yes, and I thought it was rather cool.
Yeah, so I think we'll continue with that theme, and I think that we can accommodate that still with this design.
Good, right. And then the equipment for bocce ball, is that something that people will bring their own, or we're going to have it out there, or how is that handled?
Yeah, we've considered that. We're going to have some storage there for leagues, and we'll also have equipment available over at the youth center for people that want to come in and just borrow the equipment and check it out for leisure use.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah, just one. I think what was meant here in the project timeline was that when it says March, April, May, June, and August, that's all of next year. Is that right? Because it says construction begins August 2012. So
we were really being ambitious with that, so we go ahead and correct that to 2013.
2013. Okay, that sounds fine. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. And then I just had a couple of questions. Children's theater input into any of the design?
Not yet, but we will be going to Children's Theater. They will be an integral part in helping to design the stage. That's one of the primary reasons of going to a permanent stage is to get Children's Theater in the park, so we can get live theater outdoors for people to enjoy.
Great. And then I recall going to a couple of Shakespearean plays down in East Palo Alto at one of the schools there. And it struck me that they would have an intermission, and then they would have concessions, and then also after everything was over, you could get concessions. Do we have any type of ability to have concessions in this park, either with what's there now, or could we design it into a project like this?
We don't have any plans on that now to do that. Of course, the concessions are usually provided by our local vendors that park in the parking lot area for people to access, and then on occasion especially for the SAL programs. They have food booths there available for participants, but we have nothing drawn up at this particular time to have like a permanent place to
Right.
provide snacks.
So right now, it's the roll-away type things.
That's correct.
Roll in, roll out,
Yes.
which is probably okay, but I was just wondering. And then the last question is, have we considered anything for perhaps some lighting? That what I'm thinking of is, I've noticed when you go there, when you go to the park for the concerts in the summertime, towards the end of the season, it's it's starting to, once we get to dusk, and it might be nice to have introduced some kind of lighting that's kind of hidden, like maybe in the trees or something, or
We're planning on some park-like pole structures, like lower, like 14-foot to path lights, just
Okay.
to get people out of the park safely.
right, okay.
In this portion of the park.
So there's some kind of consideration
Yes, there
for
is.
those kinds of things. Great, okay. All right, those are my questions. Very good. Thank you for the presentation on it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, next item. Turn to the agenda. Next item is 11A, and that's the storefronts on San Carlos Avenue. Mark Sawicki's coming forward.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Mark Sawicki, Economic Development and Housing Manager. Among the city's current 6-month strategic objectives is an item to develop and present to the successor agency for action a plan to address the vacant successor agency-owned storefronts. The successor agency properties at 1245 San Carlos Avenue and 616 Laurel are currently vacant, making an unsightly appearance in an otherwise vibrant downtown. If the Wheeler redevelopment project moves forward as proposed, the structures could be demolished in advance of development and digging out the site for underground parking. It's anticipated that could occur as early as year-end 2013. If the Wheeler redevelopment project is not approved, the successor agency is required by law to market the properties for sale. That could occur as early as spring of 2013. In the interim, at a minimum, the city would like to clean up the exterior appearance of the buildings and diminish the impact of the continued vacancy. Ideally, the city would like to see an active use in the buildings. However, there's a number of factors that make interim usage difficult, if not prohibitive. One of them is code compliance for the buildings and the potential need for improvements if there's going to be a replacement use there. Particularly the 616 Laurel building may have some structural issues, may also require electrical upgrades, sprinklers, and ADA accessibility. So it would be an issue and could have some certain costs associated to it. Another is the uncertain time period that's available. With a short-term occupancy, there's a limited number of users that would be interested in something like that, and a short-term user would be unlikely to invest in improvements or to pay more than a minimal rent. And thirdly is the approval process. Because they're successor agency-owned properties, we would need to go to the oversight board with any agreements with an interim use, and that would have to get approved by the Department of Finance, which is in no way assured. So the staff has proposed an interim plan to address the appearance and the use of the vacant stores, and it's prioritized to minimize staff time and costs. In the interim, some things we've done already. We've cleaned the windows. We've added curtains behind the windows, and the next phase would be to have displays in the windows of city information, projects, Parks and Rec information. We would also want to decorate the windows for the holidays. We've probably too late to get it done for Halloween, but we definitely are in the works to do it for the Christmas holiday. And then moving forward, we would look at if there are any interim uses that could use it without having to invest significant cost in improvements, and that they would be a use that we could have without any concerns of safety. And then we would bring that to the oversight board if we had something.
Right? Questions or any comments? So this is your list of that staff has developed, and these
Yes.
are things you will be doing.
Yes.
Is that to be
Yes.
understood that way? All right. Council have any input on that at all? None? Okay.
No, I guess, given the potential of it being a short time frame, then there's a limit on what can be done. So these are all good ideas, and I think it already looks better having done item number 1 on here for the Art and Wine Fair. It looked much improved. I was really pleased with that.
The other thing that I know that I might consider adding to the list, if staff was amenable to it, and if council wanted to do it, is some type of coordinating efforts with arts and culture, or there's a couple of groups in town that have art, I'm trying to think what, societies, if you will, the ones that do the watercolor paintings and things like that, and they're the ones that do art in the park, that group, and perhaps approaching them and seeing if they have any things that they would like to display. Just something to give it vibrancy, I think, is the idea, right? And especially I think primarily, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I primarily think of what used to be the rug store. That's the biggest one that looks most blank, and then Foodville's the other. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we could certainly contact them. Usually, one of the limiting factors is in being able to do that is the display apparatus itself. I'm not sure that the city would want to incur cost associated with purchasing the thing to hold the pictures.
Right.
But to the extent that they have something available or easels available to display art, and we felt it was appropriate to the location, we could certainly talk with them.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Roble?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that suggestion you're making, Mr. Mayor, makes a lot of sense to me, too. The only other thing I would add, which I don't think is anything we can do in the near term, and certainly not with any of the properties that we don't have title to, but at the appropriate point, I think it might be worth considering whether removing one or more buildings and making them a temporary expansion of the Wheeler Plaza parking area might not be something to think about doing, as opposed to simply having a vacant building. I'm not really thinking here along San Carlos Avenue, frankly. I'm thinking more probably like Foodville. And as I said, there's some legal and ownership issues that have to get worked out first, but I hope that's something staff will sort of at least consider at some point.
Well, segueing onto that comment, I have had some discussions with merchants who back up to Foodville, and they have talked to me about the city's need to weed abate, and then there's some low walls that possibly could come down that used to be where they would put the shopping carts, and it's become a catch basin for leaves and debris and so forth, and some less than appropriate behavior. Can't go into detail on that, but yeah, so segueing onto your comment, there might be some, even short of demolishing a whole building, demolishing some what used to be amenities for the grocery store.
We'll look into that.
You'll look into that. Okay, very good. All right. If there's no other comments on this item, we'll move on to, we're skipping 11B. We're going to continue that to our next meeting. And so the only other item is the one that Mr. Olbert pulled from the consent calendar. This is item 8D.
So we do not need to formally approve this item on the agenda?
I think we were just giving comments on input. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Jeff Maltby, City Manager. This item before you this evening deals with an additional appropriation, a new project for the capital budget that the staff is requesting that really augments several other projects that the Council has already approved. It's a ceiling and fire sprinkler project for the first floor, or possibly second floor, depending on how you want to classify the building, which it is a 3-story building, one ground and underground. Currently, we have several projects on the books, a police area remodel, including the gym that we'll be sharing with the Sheriff's Department, their conference room over there, The building department is remodeling some space, including what will be some new public access. Lobby improvements will be put in. And next year, this room will be reconfigured. The dais will be rebuilt to incorporate the necessary ADA improvements to the dais so that it's accessible to all members of our public. And one area in some conversations I had with our fire marshal and some of our building folks that was overlooked is the fact that there's no fire sprinkler, fire suppression system on this floor, the second floor of City Hall. In the 90s, it was put in on the third floor, the upper floor, as well as the new ceiling tiles were put in at the same time when the roof was repaired from the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. This floor remains original. The ceiling tiles that you see in this room and that are throughout this floor, the 1960s glued tiles, they're increasingly hard to get a hold of, they're hard to put in place, and they're wearing out throughout the building. They're very difficult when we need to make HVAC repairs on this floor, and that's primarily what leads to their degradation over time as they've been taken out and put back in when we've had water leaks or those kinds of things. So rather than work on these areas that we're working on right now and then come back a year from now and do more work on the same areas, we'd like to incorporate this additional project into these projects at the same time and stage the first floor, if you will. We won't do it all at once because we'll have to move some departments around as we do this. The price tag for the project is estimated at $465,000.
56?
Yeah, $456,000. That includes a fairly healthy contingency for this type of project because once we get into the ceiling, there will undoubtedly find some things that we didn't expect that will have to be corrected as well. We think that it would be more cost-effective to do this way. Currently, the Fund 25 capital budget has a fund balance of $4.6 million, so it could handle an additional project. However, if the council would like, and I think this goes at Councilmember Olbert, if I may get out in front of your question because we've talked about this a little bit. Another alternative and change we could make to the capital budget is delaying a project. The Britton Avenue widening project is currently budgeted for $450,000 this year. That project is delayed. It will not be happening in this fiscal year. The work will proceed next year. So we can sort of swap the projects. Ultimately, the impact, the dollar impact this year to the capital budget would be the same. So we're looking for council authorization to make this amendment to the capital budget this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions?
Yes. Well, actually, I guess it's a comment, so I'll hold off and wait to see if anybody has questions.
All right. I just have one question. I don't know what the dollar figure is, but when we did some other repairs before, it triggered the railing redesign and installation of new railing because of ADA requirements. Do you know what that threshold was? I'm just wary of running into that kind of thing again.
I don't recall the threshold, but it's not particularly high. Mm-hmm. I think it would have already been triggered by the existing projects that are on the books, mm-hmm. and we have, including this room, rather than do it all at once, the building official has allowed us to stage some of the ADA improvements to the building over time, which we've been with the creation of the transition plan, the facility master plan, identifying what the deficiencies are and putting in a series of projects, beginning with the railing, which we felt was a particularly dangerous condition on the second floor. There were gaps in the railing large enough to accommodate a full-size adult going through, let alone mm-hmm. a child. So we sort of started ticking them off the list.
Okay. Very good. If there's no other questions, any discussion?
No.
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to explain for my colleagues' sake, benefit, why I had asked to have a little discussion about this item. The first building that I was ever in charge of overseeing the construction of, I recall when I went into my boss and explained to him all of the changes that had come up that we had discovered we needed to do, and they were going to increase the cost and or require some additional spending. And he listened to all of it, and he said, "Oh, that all sounds great, makes perfect sense." And I started to get up to leave, and then he said, "So what are you going to cut to keep within the original budget?" I just think it's good practice to ask ourselves, because unexpected things always happen, is kind of to manage the budget as a total, rather than simply tap into reserves, even if we have them. So that's why I had the discussion prior to the council meeting with Mr. Maltby, and that's why he was alluding to my comment, and he gave the answer of saying that staff has identified a project that is not going to happen this year, which happens to cost about the same amount of money as this one, which was unexpected. My personal preference is, in this type of situation, that we do that kind of offset rather than go after reserves, even if they're there. But that is obviously a philosophical and sort of approach to management thing, but that's why I wanted that people may differ on, but that's why I wanted to bring it up.
So my understanding is the other project is a project we would not be doing in this fiscal year anyway.
Correct.
Right, and that
Correct.
it would be deferred to the following year.
Correct.
So this would be a matter of then, as expenses are accrued through the fiscal year, it would show us less out of budget.
Correct. Or perhaps more accurately,
On-
less tapping into reserves, because I think that was the other point, is that there are additional reserves that resulted because of the operating expenses. Mr. Maltby, the operating expenses at the end of last year were a little lower than had been anticipated, correct?
That's correct.
So there was an operating surplus, basically.
That's correct.
Right.
Whether you want to formally take the action of delaying the project or not, the money would stay with the fund, but it's really a matter of, how the council wants to reflect it to the public at this point.
So what's happening is, what you would like to see happen philosophically is happening by default.
Not, no, I think it's because staff is asking us for direction as to which way we would like to go. And the original proposal was, in fact, to use some of the additional operating surplus essentially to pay for this project.
That's correct. And in my recommendation for delaying a project, I think what the mayor is saying, that if we didn't take an action to move it from one year to the next, at the end of the year when we reconcile the fund, it would have the same effect on the fund.
Mm-hmm.
But, so like I said, it's really just sort of a matter how you want to represent it at this point in the budget as opposed to next year when it'll correct itself anyway.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm happy with just letting it happen. I think what you seem to be after is more of a discussion of, is that the way we want to approach things in the future? That if you're going to bring us something that's outside the budget, identify where you're going to make cuts, or at least give other options, other alternatives, which would be use your surplus from last year's operating fund, or cut something from this year's CIP budget, or you name it, and or just pull it out of reserves.
Yeah, I think in this particular case, I mean, if it were me, what I would do is I would formally recognize, basically, and defer the Britton Avenue project, which you're saying is what's going to happen by default anyway, but I would take action to actually say, no, even if something happens that allowed it to happen this year, we wouldn't pursue it.
So you would, under alternatives here, approve the 456, but also you would be making a motion to approve the 456, but also identify the hold-off on the other project.
Correct.
And so that's part of the motion, it would be in the record.
Would we
and so
be
forth.
able to do that
Yeah.
tonight since it's not formally on the agenda that way?
That's a good question.
That's a good point.
Not sure.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, I was just wondering if we could amend the motion to that extent to officially defer the Britton Avenue
Well, I think
widening without it being on the agenda publicly.
I think the motion would be and the city attorney can weigh in here if I get this wrong, but I think the motion would be to approve the project with funding that is deferred from the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget for the Britton Avenue widening project. So,
And I think we can do that because it's, when you look under alternatives, it's, we can make any recommendation.
Give alternative
Yeah,
direction.
Alternative direction.
And
So-
I'm fine with it the way it is. To me, it's like you were saying, Mr. Mayor, it's, the end result ends up being the same. So, but I am willing to support going either way to move this item forward on the agenda.
All right.
If I could, one question, just to give you my thought on it. I agree, Mr. Olbert, that I think that's probably a good idea. I like the concept of, flipping the projects, and because you don't know what's going to happen next year. So I think that's just a wise move. But I have a different question, and that is with the upgrading the fire notification system, and all these things, ceiling tiles. Does that dovetail into the, or does it become part of the council chamber remodel? I mean, do they pretty much get done at the same time?
They will, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, then that just makes even more sense then. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Motion?
Mr. Mayor, we'll see if this works. I'll move that we approve the $456,000 for installation of a fire sprinkler system and a fire notification system on the first floor of City Hall, and that we, see if I can remember Mr. Malpe's phraseology, and that we fund it, offset it with funds deferred from the 2012-2013 capital budget for the Britton Avenues project.
Second.
Discussion? So I just have one point of discussion for the council, and it segues really on what Mr. Olbert's saying here, and it's something I brought up before, is that in these staff reports, myself, I would like, under fiscal implications, for it to be listed somewhat as a checkbook item, that if you approve this project, you are now at this point with your CIP budget, at the beginning of the year, we gave you a budget of X amount of dollars. You've done these many projects so far this year. You've approved so many projects. You approved this one, and you're now going to have $350,000 left in this item. The only way I know that now is by I have to take this item, go to my budget, open it up, look at it, and just trust that it says here this was in the budget or it wasn't in the budget. By approving this, you're staying inside the budget or you're going out of it. But I don't have that checkbook ledger, and I've been asking for that for quite some time, and it would fit to what Mr. Olbert's talking about in a way.
If I could respond through the mayor to that, I think actually in the way you described it, Mr. Mayor, is with a little bit more detail than we had envisioned providing, but I think that we had thought that we were providing that information by informing the council that there was a $4.6 million fund balance in Fund 25. So we didn't say you've approved so many projects, X number of dollars of projects already this year, but what we were trying to tell you was the current balance in the checking account for Fund 25 is $4.6 million.
I see. See, I didn't read it that way. I read it as a different kind of figure.
Okay.
But I see what you're doing.
That's why we included
Okay.
that sentence in the report.
All right. Well, I just wanted to comment on that and throw it out to the council. It's a little off on the motion in second, but I just wanted to get it in there. So.
Yeah, I'll just say that in fact, I'd like to talk to you maybe about it sometime offline a little bit more, make sure I understand it. But if I understand it correctly, I think what you're saying makes perfect sense. I mean, it's been my experience, particularly with something like a capital budget, which has a lot of different kinds of projects in it. It is easy to kind of lose track of where are we?
Where the heck are we?
And
Yeah,
I agree with Mr. Malpe. I understand that that's what staff was trying to do here, but there may be other ways of doing it that are clearer, that sort of let us see, okay, yes, I remember we ditched that one, we deferred that one, and we were adding this one, and now we're, where we are in total. So I like that it is more information, more
Okay,
transparency.
we can talk more about it, and then we could talk to the city manager, as you suggest offline. I think we're ready for a vote then. Is that right?
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Grocott?
Yes. All right. I think that cleared our agenda, so we are adjourned at 8:05. There we go.